Hello and welcome to this EXP video. We're on paper ACCA paper F1 and we're looking at chapter 5. So we're looking at chapter 5 and it's all about the environment and various influences and constraints the environment can have on businesses. Okay, so influences and constraints. Okay, as is normal, we start with having a quick look at the word cloud. So, what factors will influence from the environment? Looking at the key knowledge on page 24, this is all about something called PEST analysis. PEST analysis. Now, PEST analysis, sometimes referred to as pestle analysis, sometimes in certain books it's le pest. Sometimes it's known as SLEPT analysis. Now in ACCA F1 it's PEST. Later on in the ACCA studies it's pestle analysis at P3. But it's the same basic idea. And what we have here, in effect we have the company or the organisation, and the environment is the big picture around the company. So we have political and legal. We then have economic factors, social factors, and technological. And all of these factors are outside the company. The first one, political. An organisation needs to be aware, needs to identify what is happening on the political stage at various different levels. So we'll have the global, the big picture. An example here, we've got EU legislation. We then have various national issues on the political side. So the government policy, for example. And then local. What are the political forces on the local side of things, at local council level, for example? If we look at the legal side of things first, organisations should make sure they comply with all legislation. Employee rights, health and safety, consumer protection, and so on. If you don't do that, well, obviously you may suffer from fines. There could also be bad publicity, which would flow into poor sales, people not wanting to work for you, various things like that. And leading on from there, loss of current and future potentials. The legal authorities there, we've got different levels of legal authorities, supranational bodies, the United Nations, the UN, European courts and so on, as well as national and regional. Kind of linking in the same levels that we've got within the political, global, national and local. Included within legal, towards the bottom of page 25, we have various legal protection areas for employees, for people that are working for companies. Now this is the concept of health and safety. Health and safety in the workplace. Now, lots of people will think, okay, there's only really health and safety issues in more dangerous areas such as mining or working in factories. But actually, there are potential health and safety hazards in all businesses. The example we're showing here, offices. People would think, oh, an office isn't as dangerous as a mine. That may well be the case, but they still have their own hazards. Electrical equipment, torn carpets, spilt liquids. So, when it comes to electrical equipment, the employer, the company, has to make sure that all electrical equipment is well maintained, is serviced on a regular basis. If there's spilt liquids, for example, the organisation should make sure there's methods to clear that up quite quickly. People identify there's spilt liquids there. If, for example, you look at a lot of the fast food restaurants, McDonald's, KFC, Burger King and so on, there's a form of health and safety there. If a drink is spilt on the floor, straight away somebody will come with a warning sign saying liquid on the floor, and there'll be procedures in place to clear it up. That's an example of health and safety. Now, what we're saying here is most countries will have detailed legislation in place to protect people, employees, under health and safety legislation. Now, a common characteristic, and you don't need to know every single legislation, that would physically be impossible. You don't need to know every single legislation around the world, but a common characteristic, this is quite important, is that health and safety in the workplace is the responsibility of both the employer and the employee. It's the responsibility of both the employer and the employee. So we kind of understand that, yes, the responsibility of the employer is to provide a safe working environment and safe equipment, yes, but also it's the responsibility of the employee to behave in a safe and responsible manner. Moving on to page 26 and looking at some of the key knowledge required in terms of macroeconomic factors. A couple of things here we should look at. First of all, we've got inflation, then we'll look at this concept of unemployment, and then international payments disequilibrium. First of all, what is inflation? Well, inflation measures increases in prices. So food and products and general prices increase, that means inflation. Governments generally want more stable prices. An element of inflation is okay, but hyperinflation is very bad. Now, why do governments want stable prices? Well, inflation, as we say here, can cause uncertainty. And also, certain individuals are impacted more than others. And the example we've got here, pensioners. So pensioners with a fixed income element. If they're relying on certain fixed income and inflation's going up, they can suffer more than the general population. The next concept, unemployment. So the number of people without a job in that country. What do we mean by unemployment? People do not have a job. Now, high unemployment levels can be problematic because there can be pressures on social payments, so unemployment benefits and so on. For the people that don't have a job, the government will help support them. That can bring pressures on the government finances. But also, you've got the more sort of human aspect of it. It can bring pressures on family relationships and maybe the bigger picture social side of things where, you know, it's not a good thing to have lots of people unemployed, hanging around, not working. International payments disequilibrium. Now, what this is saying is that, look, if there's a difference between imports and exports, your international payments, this can create pressures for governments, pressures on managing the economy in terms of how do they finance the balance. So if exports or compared to imports are different, how can the local government, or how can the government of that country manage the balance in effect? Now, what policies do governments have? Two main ones here, fiscal and monetary. Fiscal is all around taxation, adjusting the level of taxation, increasing the level of personal income tax, for example, adjusting the level of corporate income tax, value-added tax, VAT. These are all taxation adjustments. The next one, we've got monetary policies. So this includes managing the money supply and changing interest rates. Increasing the rate of interest will make it more expensive for companies to borrow money, for example, and that can impact on the organization. Okay, so moving on within PEST analysis, we've looked at political, economic. Let's have a look at these social areas, the social side of things. What do we mean by social within PEST analysis? Well, population. size, profile, location. What do we mean by profile? Well, age profile. Is it an aging population? Is it a population that's getting younger? Health issues, education and wealth. These are all issues involved within social and demographic factors. Just to highlight a number of trends. Now, we've got a few here in the notes. We've got population movement from countryside to city. In a number of countries, the general population are moving from outside the city to live and hopefully work within the city. Aging population. Certain countries have an aging population. The population is getting older. That means in a few years' time there'll be more pressure on looking after these elderly people, on funding their pensions and so on. Increase in rates of obesity. In a number of countries, people are getting bigger. People are being overweight. This can cause problems with health issues, health services looking after these people. At the same time, there's also a general increase in awareness of health issues. So people generally are aware now of the benefits of exercising, the benefits of healthy eating, although, as we've mentioned here, not always implementing this knowledge. Another one we've got increased concern for environmental issues, recycling, for example. And the final sort of common sort of trend that is being seen at the moment, increased use of the internet. Now, on the T within PEST, technological, there are certain areas we've all seen, we're all aware of the huge increase in the speed of technological advances over recent years. And what have these advances resulted in? A number of issues. Downsizing, delayering, and outsourcing. Downsizing, delayering, and outsourcing. Now, what do these terms mean? Downsizing means we maintain the output levels, but we reduce the number of employees that are needed to maintain those levels. So we downsize the size of the organization, the size of the employees. Delayering, removing layers of management. So we have different layers within an organization and we remove those layers. Outsourcing, that means we pass internal activities to external providers. We outsource that. So we use external resources to perform activities which were previously performed in-house. Call centers, for example. Now, one other model I'd like to have a quick look at here. We talked a bit about pest analysis. So we've got a company here, and then the big environment outside, we've got pest analysis. Porter's 5 forces, this model looks at a sort of closer external environment to the company. It looks at competitors within an industry. Now, as the name suggests, it's called Porter's 5 forces. It means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forces that impact on an organization. We have potential entrants to the market. Okay, if it's very difficult for new entrants to enter the market, that's good news for existing companies. And we have something known as a barrier to entry. Something known as a barrier to entry can help prevent new entrants entering the market. So if you're a mobile phone company, for example, and you're the Orange or the Vodafone or companies like that, a barrier to entry to prevent new companies coming into that market would be a government license, for example. We then have suppliers, customers, substitutes, and competition. Now, all of these have different strengths in effect. If we look at Coca-Cola, and we look at Coca-Cola, the competition, well, Pepsi, the pressure of that would be massive, for example. If we look at the power of Intel, so if we look at Lenovo or HP computers, now Intel supply their chips to Lenovo computers. What sort of strength would they have? It's quite a unique item, for example, so probably quite a lot of power. Now, that's a very brief overview of PEST analysis and Porter's five forces. Thank you very much for listening.